All right. Well, thank you for joining on tonight. And tonight we are really excited. We're going to be talking about protein this evening. And the good thing about protein is that we get to learn a little bit more about some of those myths and facts that a lot of people maybe aren't quite sure about of what happens with protein. And so tonight's going to be an interesting time. Before we get going, though, I'd like to share a little bit of what we've been learning in January. To start off, we learned about carbohydrates and how important those carbohydrates are as our energy source. And oftentimes when people cut out carbohydrates, what happens is that they have low energy. And so it's important that we keep a good balance of healthy carbohydrates in our life. The next week we talked about fats. And when we learned about fats, there were 3 types. And we have to be really cautious of those labels, watching out for trans fats especially. And tonight we're going to be talking about proteins. And then next week is one of my favorites. We're going to be talking about how to put it all together as far as our listen and lose system and what this really looks like in day-to-day life. And so any of these webinars are accessible through our Facebook page, our newsletter, and also on our website. So as we discuss each week, the importance of nutrition is really important. We look and see that 80% of our results are going to be related to our nutrition. And so that's kind of sometimes hard to swallow because we want to work out really hard and we think, man, why am I not seeing those results? Well, oftentimes it's because we are not taking care of our nutrition. So let's look at these shelves. We've probably all seen this before, and we've seen shelves and shelves of different types of protein. We've seen whey protein and all these protein supplements on the shelves, not only in a gas station and grocery store, but you can go to any health food store and see so many different protein choices. And so it gets kind of confusing, and oftentimes there are things in here that our body won't even recognize. So we're going to learn a little bit more tonight about what to kind of try to avoid and what to look for in different protein sources. First off, what we need to understand is that whole foods are actually going to be what supply the protein that our body needs. And in fact, what you're going to learn tonight is that produce, vegetables have just as much protein as some of our animal sources that we may have known of in the past. But we're going to learn about how to get those into our daily diet. So first thing, it's really important to know how much protein our body actually needs. Now, I'll tell you, in the fitness world, this is one of the most misconceived ideas, is that sometimes people think they need a ton of protein. Well, in fact, they don't. In fact, the amount of protein that we need isn't very much. In fact, it's just a simple equation. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our body weight and divide it by 2.2, and that's going to give us our weight in kilograms. And then we're going to multiply that by 0.8. And what that's going to tell us is that's going to tell us about how many grams per day that we need. And so I picked a 175-pound person, they're only going to need 71 grams a day. That is not very much. And if you look there, the average adult woman is only needing 40 to 70. So probably we're getting more than that. And I want to talk real quick. There are a few dangers that happen when we do get too much protein. Some things that they have noticed and things that have happened in the past is dehydration, increased fat storage, because remember, anything in excess is going to lead to fat storage. Also some complications, diabetic, oh goodness, kidney stones, and osteoporosis. And so I want you to think about this. If we have more than enough of what we need, it's most likely going to be overconsumption and turn to fat. So one thing, though, on the flip side is that what if we're not getting enough protein? Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm not really sure what I'm getting and what I'm not getting. And so I try to listen to my body. These are some of the things that happened. And maybe you're a little bit more tired when you maybe shouldn't be. All right. Maybe you're lacking some of that muscle tone and strength, or your body's not healing like it used to, or your hair even starts to fall out. All of those are signs that we might be low on our protein consumption. So here's a question for us. We know we need protein, and usually we think about meat sources, but I want to show you this picture because it shows that there's so many other sources of protein. So we can see here that most of these are going to be very high protein foods. So we're looking at vegetables, any of our lentils and beans, any nuts and seeds, of course the obvious of the meats and poultries and seafoods. And then non-dairy milk products also have protein. So you can be thinking about your almond milks and your soy milks. Those have got some protein in them as well. And then, believe it or not, a lot of grains also have protein, especially those that are the all-natural sprouted grains. So start to look at the protein in the foods that you're consuming and realize that a lot of things have a lot of protein that we might not realize. Now, I know this illustration might look kind of small on your screen, but this is really good to see that so much of our protein, as just mentioned, can come from natural sources, all right? So I'm not pushing for you to be a vegetarian tonight. What I'm trying to emphasize is that we don't have to always get our protein from those meat sources. And in fact, our body is able to digest things a lot easier when it's from sources that are plant-based. So let's look a little bit more into this. I want you to ask yourself, how much protein are you actually eating? If you take a basic food pyramid, most every section of this food pyramid shown here actually is containing protein. And so when you look to see almonds, you might not know how much protein that is. Just 3 ounces gives us 18 grams. And remember, an average woman only needs 40 to 70 a day. Now, let me clarify something on that as well, is that average usually means that they're not working out hardcore. If you're in P31 Fitness, we work out pretty hard, so you're going to want to up that protein intake just a bit. But if you'll use that equation, it's going to give you a pretty good estimate of what it is. Look down here on the bottom right, and it shows oats. Believe it or not, a cup of oats has 7 grams, give or take a little. So that's pretty neat to know. So for me, oftentimes I'll take my oats and I'll actually mix the complete protein powder from Juice Plus into my oatmeal in the mornings, and that gives me that extra source of protein. Some other illustrations here that I thought you would find interesting is that an avocado has 10 grams of protein, so that's pretty good. Remember, avocado doesn't mean that we get to also eat the whole basket of chips with that guacamole, but it is good to know that it's got a lot of protein in it. And you can sit here and read the amounts of protein, not only in our vegetables, but these legumes and beans. My goodness, look at that. A cup of soybeans has 28 grams of protein. That's a lot of protein. So it's a pretty cool illustration to just get to see some of those. In the basic nuts that we all consume, you're looking at about an ounce. So an ounce of cashews has 4.4 grams, right? If you're like me, cashews are kind of hard to stop eating, so we probably eat more than that, which gives us more protein, but it also gives us more fat. So we want to be careful with that as well, even though it's the good fat. Also, when you look at some of those soy milks, like I showed you before, and the grains. So this is just a quick chart. If you're taking notes, you can kind of look at as well and kind of see some of that information. Down here on the bottom, meat and poultry, 3 ounces is about the size of a deck of cards, and that's going to give us a higher amount. So that's more like 21 grams, kind of depending on what source you have it from. We also want to be careful, though, because our body can only absorb about 20 to 25 grams at one time. Here's another great picture to kind of get a good gauge of the amounts of protein that we can use and that we can need. So if you look at about the size of a tennis ball, you're going to be getting anywhere from about 15 grams right in here. I love portion control, and we can look at certain objects. So when do we need to actually eat this protein? Well, it's really important that we know that we need to eat it about 30 minutes to an hour after we do our workouts. That's going to help to support that lean body mass that we have, and it's going to help us retain less fat. But also, the most important, it's going to help our body recover faster. So that soreness that we feel and that way that our stress on the muscle that we just placed, the protein is actually going to help to reduce some of the soreness because it's going to help to fuel our muscles. So every single time you eat, you need to be putting protein in. This is a really good illustration here because it shows a good plate. If you look over here, you'll see half of our plate should be filled with some sort of produce, then a quarter with carbohydrates, and a quarter with proteins. Now, I would say that in America, oftentimes we have these two switched. We oftentimes have half of our plate full of protein and maybe a quarter of it with produce. So start to make those conscious choices. Whenever you go to sit down to eat, whether it is a full meal or a snack, you want to always be combining your foods. So here gives a great illustration of how to get carbs, proteins, and fats with every single meal. And as we mentioned on the first few webinars, how important that is, that every time we eat, we need to be having a carb, a protein, and a fat. So you can see here the various sources. In our second one here, the bread is our carb. The peanut butter is our protein and our fat. And the banana, of course, is our fruit and carb source. So you can see there how easy it is to do some meal combinations. I thought this was pretty funny. This little cartoon here. I'm hungry again. I'm sure we've all felt that. Well, oftentimes it's because we're not having protein routinely into our day. We may not have any protein until lunch. Well, a fact of the matter is that we're going to be pretty hungry if we don't get protein in our body. It helps us actually stay full longer and to keep that blood sugar stable. take a look at this chart here. This chart here is pretty shocking to me. I don't know about you, but I can definitely tell when my blood sugar is low and when I'm just kind of feeling really weak and I need to eat something. Well, we tend to grab things that are mostly high in sugar instead of high in our good source of protein. And so what happens with our blood sugar is that if we're skipping meals or if we're not getting protein in there, our blood sugar is all over the place. So as mentioned before, protein actually helps to keep this stable. We want to keep our blood sugar stable. One of the best tools that we have and that I've found are the Juice Plus shakes. They actually taste good, unlike some shakes, and it's a plant-based protein, so it's a great option for you. Sometimes you're not a shake drinker, and I understand that, and so oftentimes what I'll do with this is to make the protein balls, and I'll just take oats and peanut butter and the chocolate protein and honey and make a good snack for that too, and kids love them. But there's lots of different varieties of recipes you can make. There's so many meal replacement shakes out there that you got to be careful. The thing with Juice Plus is it's whole food based, and it's a good protein source. So think about that in your daily diet. We encourage something called the Transformation Challenge, and these are just some things that we can expect when we take Juice Plus. Remember, Juice Plus is just food. It's fruits and vegetables that have been juiced and dried and put in capsule form. And so when I'm putting this in my body every day, along with a shake, I know I'm getting almost 50 different fruits and vegetables into my cells each day. Well, you can't go wrong with that, so that's always a positive thing. Some of our resources that we have available to you guys is that we've got our workbooks, and we have sold so many in January. And if you haven't bought yours yet, you still have some time. Every woman in January classes gets one for $10 off, so it's only $14. And this has food trackers in it. It's got a personal meal plan, how to feed your metabolism. All the information we cover on the webinars are also in these books. But most importantly, it talks about our listen and lose system. We also have lots of blog articles available, nutrition consults, of course, Juice Plus, and a Facebook group for that Juice Plus. So when we look at this picture, I show this picture every week because it's so powerful. I know we think when we go to workout that that's enough. Well, it's only 20%. So whatever you're doing in workout is awesome. I'm not diminishing that, but we also have to look and see what we're putting into our mouths the rest of the time. Remember, food is fuel, and you have to ask yourself, what are you using for your fuel source in your body? Are you putting junk in every day, or are you putting in good sources? Computer's kind of acting slow tonight. So we have a couple of things with our Juice Plus. And again, this is not all about Juice Plus, but when you're looking at protein sources, you've got to look at a good source. And this is one that's actually been researched by MD Anderson, and that is Juice Plus. So it's going to be your fruits and your vegetables, and they also have great shakes and great bars. Great source that we can fuel ourselves. That's all it is. Okay, you want to look at the back of your gray book. If you're in class, you can read a little bit more about the 90-day challenge. And it's just encouraging all the things we've been teaching as far as eating often, every 2 to 3 to 4 hours, getting in good proteins, good carbs, good fats, drinking at least 1 shake a day, if not 2. Seeing those results will come quickly. What I want to share, the biggest part of this, is our listen and lose. And this is what we'll be covering more next week, is that we've got 7 easy tips for you to kind of follow. Because you know what? None of this information means anything if we have an emotional connection with food. And every woman I've ever talked with has some sort of emotional connection, whether it be that you eat when you're happy, you eat when you're sad, you eat when you're bored. And all of those things tie into what we're learning. And so those are some good rules to look at, is that we have got to check those emotions. We need to slow down. We need to have a treat every day. There's something psychological about that. We're not going to diet. We're not going to hide anything. We're going to think about how we're going to feel, and we're going to have some grace on ourselves. Ladies, this is a big deal. You need to take some time to really think about what this looks like in your life. Because you know what? There's no diet out there that's going to outdo what healthy eating does. And think about all those diets we hear about. If there was a diet that worked, people would stop inventing them. Have you ever thought about that? It's because diets don't work. All right. What works is us to eat healthy and fuel our bodies with good, healthy food choices as often as possible. It's really important to stop trying the newest, greatest thing. So as we kind of close down tonight, I'm going to leave some time for questions. We have to remember about the education piece. There are 2 other webinars that we've already covered, and those are on our P31 website under the News tab. So you can go on there and click and listen to those webinars on carbohydrates and on fats. And then, of course, next week we'll have 1 more through January. We want to remember that our body's a temple, and it really does matter what we put in. I'm not telling you to eat perfect. That's not the case here. We eat very normal at our house, okay? We have treats. We have good snacks that some people would claim shouldn't be in the house. Well, you know what? What I've learned over time is that allowing myself to have that snack prevents me from going and binging on something later that I shouldn't have. And so we eat healthy the majority of the time, but we're not perfect. We're real women, we're real results, and we're striving to eat real food. We're going to follow that Listen and Lose program, and we need to really be thinking about our food and our emotions. So that is really the last slide tonight. So is there any, I'm going to open this up real quick. While I do this, is there anyone that has any questions about anything that you heard tonight? Let me unmute you real quick. All right. Okay, does anybody have any questions tonight? If you need to, you can push the bottom left unmute button on your screen. I know it's kind of weird to see yourself. You probably weren't expecting it. All right, any comments or questions about any of the webinars or information you've learned this month or P31 as a whole? Are y'all enjoying it?